Here talking about image is everything, perking up your website. Like everything, things come into fashion, out of fashion. What looked great in your house 10 years ago, maybe you're looking at it now and going, what was I thinking? And websites are very much the same way. Things change. What worked 5 years ago doesn't necessarily work today. Some other items are classics, and they always work. So we're going to be talking about what you can do in regards to content that will help you perk up your website, or if you're somebody who's a designer, a developer, I know frequently you'll go out and you'll create a website for somebody, and then they'll start asking you content questions, and you're like, that's not really my field, I'm not really sure how I'm going to juggle that answer, and hopefully I can give you a couple of tools and tips and things that you can give to those clients that will best help them to help themselves. So just to give you a little bit of my background, which Drew already gave, but just to highlight it, I'm a former teacher and actor turned content writer, event planner, and marketer. You can find me just about everywhere online at New Yorker Laura. By the end of the day, the accent will start returning to its normal accent, which is something like Leah Remini meets Fran Drescher. Right now it's doing pretty well, but when I'm tired at 5, you'll hear it. And if you want a story on how I shifted from those careers and shameless self-promotion, come to my next talk and you'll find out. Okay, trends in images. As I said, what worked 5 years ago doesn't work today. Here's where it's all at today, and that is the hero image. Talking about the image that is the first thing that people see in your website. You want a big impact, you want a big image. Okay, going back, what was sort of the thing that everybody was doing a couple years ago was the slider. Here's what one industry expert has to say about sliders. How many of you know Yoast? Use the Yoast plugin or what have you? One of my favorite things to read in life is the Yoast newsletter. I don't like reading a lot of newsletters, but I will tell you, I read pretty much 90% of the Yoast newsletters that come out because they have some really, really solid information in it in SEO, content marketing, that is written in plain speak English from people whose first language is Dutch, and really great, no nonsense, on the mark information. And this is what Yoast, of the Yoast plugin, in fact, had to say. And it says, if your theme forces you to include a slider, also named carousels, on your homepage, meaning the big first image we're going to see, top of the fold, please realize that it's making you use a feature that has no value for SEO. A feature that is probably slowing down your site by loading extra JavaScript and prevents your user from reading the good stuff, aka your content, immediately, and will most probably account for less conversion as well. I'll give you a really good example that continues this conversation. Statistically, 1% of the people actually click on a slide. Most people at this point they go right past it. And if they do click, it tends to be the first slide. A lot of times that first slide is not what is considered most important to you. One client that I was working with was a school, and they were putting up in their sliders like were their current events. And it depended upon how often there was an event. Nothing makes you look so stale as talking about the Christmas pageant and it's it's January 15th. It would look even worse on July 15th. But January 15th, talking about the Christmas pageant probably wasn't the best idea ever. The other thing too is sliders confuse people. You're sending multiple offers. Which is most important? What is current? What is not current? Is this what I really want you to glean about my organization, my company, what we have to offer? They do absolutely slow down your website, particularly if whoever has put the images in there has not optimized them. I have seen some mammoth images loaded into sliders, and depending upon the parameters that somebody has set on the slider, my favorite was when they never deleted pictures from the slider. I was sitting in my office at a former job one day, and I just started doing this. 1, 2, 3. And finally, the person who was next to me said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Counting how many things there are in the slider." About 20 minutes later, I was up to 97. They had just never taken images out of this slider, and they had altered the code so that it just kept serving up images. And none of them were really fantastic images. Some of them they had used Microsoft Paint, and I do mean Microsoft Paint, to put helpful words on them, what they thought were helpful words on them to identify what was going on in the images. And some of them were just not really that dynamic, like Board of Trustees meeting, and then they named all the people in the image. Like it wasn't the best thing ever for that organization. The other thing too is sliders have an impact on accessibility. So many people now are using screen readers. The screen reader gets stuck on the slider. It just kicks back again because it says, "Oh, I have to read content," and then it goes down the page. Whoops, something else happened. They go back up again. It's like a never-ending loop for accessibility. It's a huge problem, particularly when this is the first impact on your website. And as I said before, the perpetual sizing issue where somebody has not optimized it. Now, I wish to say that I had always been so organized and I always knew not to do this, but alas, I do have websites that I've designed that I have inflicted sliders upon society. Here's one that I designed a couple years ago, and the slider is still there. And I can tell you, when I was the webmaster of this particular website, 90% of the people coming to our website, the first thing they wanted to know our curriculum. The next thing they wanted to know was where a school was located next to them, and then after that, the remaining 5%, pick a topic, any topic. They almost never clicked on the slider. They didn't really care about whatever my news item happened to be, and they certainly didn't care about what some school that was nowhere near the school where their child was going to do, what money they raised for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. It was not getting our organization of a whole that had 100 some odd schools any kind of traction whatsoever. Here's one that works really well from a similar organization with a hero image. Archdiocese of Philadelphia right away draws you in, and then you can go to the menu and your contact after that. The hero image is not slowing down the site. It gives you a multicultural perspective. It's telling the story of that organization much better than a slider would have. So that kind of segues into my next point, which is what makes a good image? And the short version of it is emotional impact. And you can make an emotional impact in a couple of different ways, but that's really what it comes down to. It's the old adage of a picture's worth 1,000 words. Picture tells a story. And if you can get a really, really gorgeous image, a dynamic image, that will tell your story. You've probably heard the phrase, show, don't tell. Images really help you do that. So here are a couple of really practical items that you can do. One is what I call the rule of 3, and that is 3 people are always more impactful than a crowd of people. The reason is, with 3 people, I can see faces, I can see eyes, I can see emotion. I am captivated by facial expression. If I have a massive crowd, I'm not nearly as captivated, I'm not nearly as drawn in. What I like to call it is the quarter test or the thumbnail test, which means if the person's face isn't actually, and you can do this on whatever device you want to do this on, the size of a quarter or my thumbnail, it's not great. Because I lose the eyes, I lose the facial expression, I lose the emotion. Lots of charities that want your money, if you ever notice it, they always have a picture of one person, particularly a child with gigantic eyes and the sympathetic little face. There's a reason they have one child in the promo. It's because that face draws you in. Another biggie is fill your content container. Over time, content containers have changed their size, but sometimes people are still sizing their images as if they still had a 400 pixel across content container. Use your space. Let the images fill the content container, okay? Use your right and left align sparingly. I tend to think that it works best for things like headshots or things like an infographic that you want people to scroll content along the side. But other than those items, I really find that it's much better off centering your images or letting them float to center. I wouldn't say putting center tags on them, but just let it float to center and fill your content container. Works much, much better for you. And again, please, please, please optimize those images. 72 dpi is great. 300 dpi is not so much. You don't need that for the web. This is a biggie. Just because you can do something in Photoshop doesn't mean you should. Sometimes I'm like, oh wow, it's somebody's first day with the program and they are using every bell and whistle that came with it, a million filters, and less is more. Less is definitely more. Just because something can be done doesn't mean it should be done. So really, really think about it. Sometimes you can just kind of take away an image because you've done too much to it. Don't zap the authenticity. Here's a little other message too. Cropping is your friend. I've taken thousands of photos at this point, between old school cameras where I took my 36 roll down to the photo mat and prayed something would come back right, to the digital cameras that we all have today. In that entire time, I think I've met 3 photos that I've ever put online that I haven't cropped. Almost every single photo I have ever taken, I've cropped, and sometimes you have a really good photo sitting in the middle of a really bad photo. Cropping is absolutely key. And here's just a little bit of an example of that. The 2 pictures that are there, they're not photos that I've taken, but they were photos that were talking about a program that is backpacks for kids. And what the program does is that it gives backpacks laden with school supplies from kids from disadvantaged neighborhoods whose parents really struggle to give them the supplies they need to kick off the school year. And there you can see 2 publicity photos that were taken at schools with kids receiving these backpacks. Which photo do you think works better? The one with the one child with the eyes and the one backpack. Can I not imagine that there were 30 other happy children along with that person? Definitely. So you can see the difference there between the zoom in, the quarter test, cropping the photo. It all comes together. Which then brings me to the next question. Okay, so like I'm not a designer or a photographer. I get the cropping thing. I could probably make that one work, but there are so many like cool images and I don't have Photoshop. I don't know what to do. What do I do finding some of these images? Well, I have a couple of resources for you. So first of all, there are a couple of cool sites on the internet that let you use the photographs for free for non-commercial purposes, meaning you can't put them on a t-shirt and sell the t-shirt, or you can't slap them on a coffee mug and sell the coffee mug. You can use it to illustrate content on your website. Okay? 2 of my favorite ones are Unsplash and Pixabay. All of the background photos that are in my slide deck are all from Pixabay. Are all from Unsplash. Let me give the right credit. Pixabay is fantastic. They have other slides that I'm using later on today. There's also another really great service that I really like called 123RF, which stands for 123 royalty free, where you give them money, you get a certain number of credits, and you can buy photos, vector art also, and they've just branched into video based upon credits. If you need a very high-res image, it costs more credits. If you need a low-res image, which is what we need on the web, less credits. The images that I have right there are examples from 123RF that I used with a community theater. They don't have a lot of budget, but they put on shows each year. They wanted some good photography to illustrate the shows that they were doing. 123RF is where we went to purchase those items, and it really helped that local theater that doesn't have money to pay, you know, a graphic designer to come up with a logo for fresh for every single, with original art. They, you know, small little community theater, everybody's on a, you know, everybody's a volunteer. They're on a tight budget. This was a great resource. So again, this may be a great resource for your clients or when you're designing yourself. Here's another tool that I love a lot. I'm not great at making collages. I'm not great at figuring out this size picture needs to be here with just this right slant, and then I'm not super great at this. I know what looks good, but I don't know how to do that myself. Enter two sources that are really great for helping people out, called Canva and PicMonkey. And what they are basically online sites that have some graphics that they have themselves. They also let you upload your own pictures. It's all drop-drag software into templates, and they create these beautiful images. For example, the one next to my points there was from Canva. The way that it works, they give you a certain number of items that are completely for free. That graphic right there was completely for free. Other items, if you want one of their pictures, you're like, oh, that's not a free one, but I really love that. Oh my gosh, am I going to go broke? They will charge you the whopping fee of $1 for something that you really love that isn't for free. Definitely worth the dollar. And if you're saying, oh man, I really have to redo my hero images, where can I get those? Here are a couple coming off of Canva. Free. Free. All I did was change the wording a little bit. And free. If your client is a restaurant, if they're a realtor, if they need a good hero image, it's a great way to do it. The other thing too that I'm talking about, I mentioned earlier, people love infographics. They love looking at a journey on an infographic and seeing, you know, I started here, I ended up there. They're great for things like timelines. They're great for when you're trying to show before and afters. They're great for like top 10 tips. They're great for so many things. They're visually engaging. People love them. Canva lets you create infographics on their site. Again, all drop drag, and then you download it as a JPEG, PDF, just about any file format you might want, they'll let you download in. And all of the ones that are here are just, again, free examples, and if you want something that's not, you can pay for it. Another one that's one of my favorites is a site called Juxtapose that lets you do side-by-side comparisons. It's a little slider that you can drag across. You probably saw them. It became most popular when the tsunami hit a couple years ago, and people were doing like before and after comparisons of what various areas of the Japanese coastline looked like before the tsunami hit and after the tsunami hit. But you can use this with just about anything. Let's say your business is redesigning something and you want to show the before and the after. You can have that side by side of before and after. Let's say it's a project and you're in the middle and you want to show like this is the middle, this is how I was working on it, and then this is the finished product. You have a way of doing it. It's a great item. People love it. It's engaging. And Juxtapose basically lets you do it for free. They will not charge you for that, which is awesome. Another cool site that I like are maps. And maps have a lot of different possibilities. It could be as simple as showing somebody how to get to your location. And you can do a Google map that you can just ping, we're here, get directions. That's probably the basic that most people use. But there are some other really good things you can do with Google Maps. The screen cap that is the Google Map cap is one that I did for WordCamp US last year, where we pinpointed the nearby restaurants, ice cream parlors, ATM machines, places that you couldn't miss for dinner, vegan and vegetarian restaurants for people also, because that was certainly a big thing. And we had our own little Google map, which we embedded in our website so people could figure out where they were staying versus where what they needed was. Awesome thing to do and easy to embed in your website. The other one that I only just discovered recently, which is super cool, is a site called Mapbox. And they give you a certain amount for free, and then there's other plans that are paid, and it lets you create really cool maps of all different types, different terrain, different topography, something that's like a little more cartoon look, which is the cap that I have right there. You basically pinpoint in an address and it zooms to that location and you figure out what you want. It also will let you custom put in with an SVG file. You can overlay it with other cool little icons. You can do a lot with it. Super, super creative. You know, the limit is just your imagination on that one, and really can help to illustrate any kind of points you might be making on an otherwise dry web page. So here's another one that people don't think about some of the time. Social media. I think at this point, most people have social media of some form connected to their website, and what social media you should be using is probably a topic for another day. Not every social media platform is right for everybody. The other day, I just found out, for reasons best known to them, the New York Stock Exchange decided to create a Pinterest page. I don't know if they're creating Bull and Bear brownie recipes. I don't really know what they're doing with that. But not every social media platform is for every site. However, please utilize whatever social media platforms you are using beyond just those cool little icons up at the top of your page or on your contact page or hidden down the bottom in the footer. There's a lot more that you can be doing with those items. Those items are driving content to your website, and at the same time, you're also driving people back out to those sites for them to share your content with others, which again then drives more traffic back to your website. It's like the old commercial, they told two friends, and so on and so on and so on. Everybody over 40 knows what I'm talking about. Everybody under 40 is going, I don't know what commercial she's meaning. Give you an example. Uploading photos into a photo gallery is probably a long process if you're trying to upload them into a gallery right on your WordPress website. No matter what widget you're using, what plugin you're using, it's going to take you a while. I can upload 25 photos to Facebook in about a hot 45 seconds. So here's what a community theater that I work with is doing. Whenever they have a show, they take a key image from the show. This particular one was called A Seussified Christmas Carol, which kind of tells you exactly what it's about in the title. There is Ebenezer Scrooge with his cat in the hat on him. And there were 20 some odd production photos that went with that. Rather than upload the 20 odd production photos into the web page that advertised this show, what we did is we put them on our Facebook page and embed the gallery. And the two things work together. People come to our Facebook, people, you know, as I said, traffic goes both ways. Very, very helpful, gets us more engagement on social, and people are very quickly able to see those photos. Worked well. And on all the photos we link to our website, you know, here's where you can find out more, buy tickets now. Very simple, basic call to action. Another one too is video. Don't underestimate the power of video on your website. It can be your own YouTube channel. It can be other videos, whether it's Vimeo or the local news station. The cap I have there is from a local news station that was talking about some damage done to a group that I work with recently from a flash flood. It helped our content message get out. Rather than just dryly describe what happened to the organization, 2 paragraphs, embed the video from Cable 12 talking about what happened, and it just made the content much more real for many more people. I can tell you that the amount of donations we got in when it was just word versus putting that video on there was night and day. Other things you can do too, you can also embed Twitter. Twitter is good. Joe Casabona was talking earlier today, and he said Twitter might only be good for angry comments. I do hear what he was saying in regards to that, but it can also be good for witty comments, sardonic comments. It can be good for a lot. One of the sites that I work with called Hypable, which is an entertainment news site, uses it for a variety of things. One of the things we use it for is fan reactions. So if something happens and like fans are all up in arms about something, we just go out to Twitter and we do a couple of sentences and then we'll embed a bunch of Twitter reactions. So for example, when the World Cup match was going on between Croatia and Argentina really wasn't doing very well. There is their most famous soccer player ever having a GIF reaction, which is basically face palm. And you could see him face palming over and over and over again. It just made our content work better. The other thing you could use it for is just authoritatively talking about something. You know, if you just want to add some oomph, you can put a Twitter embed that talks about what you're talking about by an expert, somebody with the verified tick. It gives you, again, more bang for your buck. Somebody else besides me said this. Look, we can show you where. Okay? The other one, too, is we've also used it very frequently when somebody has passed away, is what we've used. And we've gone to Twitter to find people who have known that expert to comment on the situation. We'll write a couple of paragraphs, and then we'll get Twitter reactions from people who were connected to that person in some capacity. That certainly has helped us broaden out our content. And again, it just sort of helps us to deliver our message. So here are some other things you can look at. Tips for WordPress. Design is also in how your words are presented. So here are some things that are great to use and some things that can go into the annals of yesteryear. And I know sometimes you're dealing with a client, sometimes you're dealing with your boss who says, no, I want you to do it this way, and you know, oh, that way is not the best way, but you have to make them happy. If it helps you to say this person at WordCamp said it, by all means, here's a little extra for you. Things that need to die. Marquees. Those are those things that slowly tell you the news across the top of your web page. You know, you have to find out 10 minutes later that school is closed tomorrow. Things like that. Hit counters. Nothing says my website was created in 1997 like seeing a hit counter down there. Get rid of the hit counters. Animated GIFs. Now, I don't mean GIFs that are a video cap. Video cap is fantastic. But having like the little tiny figure GIFs, a site that I did several years ago to symbolize the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, had a little elephant and he raises his trunk and the little donkey kicks up his back feet. That time has come and gone. Those need to go away. They look like the Gumby of the internet at this point. Dark content containers. That was a thing. It's no longer a thing. It's also horrendous for accessibility. People can't read it. Rainbow colors. I know that we can highlight our colors in a multitude of colors. Pick two in your palette that contrast well with the rest of the information and judiciously decide when something is bolded or italicized. Bold is not effective if everything is bolded. And italics are really rough on my eyes for more than a sentence, like super, super rough on my eyes. Here are some good, cool things you can do. Sleek new things. Beautifully styled H tags. I mean, don't overload the fonts. You don't want like 37 different fonts in there. But, you know, pick a couple. Beautifully styled H tags get your attention. And those are two examples right over there from WordCamps. The two examples I picked are from WordCamp Philly, actually. Drop case. Really cool looking. It just gives another little perk on your content. You can get it in different themes. You can get it with different plugins. Just double check it when you do it that it still looks good on mobile. Most of the time it does, but every now and then you get something that's not quite right and it messes up the mobile. So double check it if you're installing a plugin there. Make sure it's working okay. Block quotes with flair. Use your CSS to really design those block quotes out. They can look really cool. Even bulleted lists, ordered and unordered lists. Like, do something fun with the bullet points. Make it look good. Don't just go for the ordinary. All of it can be interesting and fun. The sky's the limit on it. So thank you very much for listening. As I said, you can pretty much find me anywhere online at New York or Laura. I didn't change my slides at the end. The talk was a fill-in talk today, and I would have made it said WordCamp Minneapolis. I realize it still says WordCamp Lehigh Valley from when I last gave this talk, but a big thank you to the volunteers and the sponsors and everybody running this today, because without them this frankly wouldn't be taking place. So thank you to everybody here who's volunteering and sponsoring. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help. Hi.
So one more resource for royalty-free images I just found. Pixels, P-E-X-E-L-S.
Yeah, just for the video. Yeah, just another resource for the royalty-free images. Pixels, P-I-X-E-L-S. P-E-X-L-E-S.com.org. One of those. There's Google. But somebody had asked me the last time I gave this talk, like, what about taking images from like Wiki Commons and whatever? And I said the problem with that is if somebody's uploaded to Wiki Commons and they haven't had a chance to review the content and it is actually somebody else's intellectual property, you can get stung. Like, really, if you're getting images, get them from a reputable source. So if somebody ever questions you, you can say, here's where I got it, here is the proof of where I got it. I know people who have gotten stung taking images they shouldn't have, and that has been as painful as $500, and it has been as painful as $20,000. So don't steal images. Yes, do not cross Getty Images. Also, do not cross Disney. That is a painful lesson to learn.
I just was curious about using video as the hero image.
I will tell you, I know you can do it now. I'm not, personal opinion, I think the still works better. I don't think people want to take the time to really look at it. They just go past it. I will tell you, we used it in part at one point for WordCamp US last year, and nobody liked it. And we very quickly disposed of it. Others may have a different opinion. Your mileage may vary. If it was a one-page website, I might have a difference of opinion. Like, as like sometimes you're looking for just that one-page, big, splashy, what have you, I think I would go for it in that case. But other than that, I am not personally a fan.
What would you tell somebody whose website audience is two distinct audiences? And our format so far has been the slide. And we have 17 to 19-year-olds and working professionals.
Gotcha.
Undergraduate college, graduate programs. And so, and on 2 campuses and 3 centers, so it's not like I can't put a shot of campus up there. So what kind of...
I would take, you could do it in Photoshop, you could do it in Canva, like do a split screen, do a diagonal image and I'm gonna call it a collage, but that makes it sound like I cut and paste in a million different things. I would do like 3 images with some really cool diagonal lines, splitting those images. So you might have like 4 images, or if you have 3 campuses, do 3, because I understand, you're looking at alumni, you're looking at prospective students, you're looking at people for research, sure. And the other thing is too, if you have a hero image, that could be the hero image that's up there this fall. Maybe what is the priority summer and fall? There may be a completely different priority come winter, you're in that gift giving time. So you can certainly change that image out within your brand and everything else. But that's what would be my approach to something like that, is when you're dealing with different audiences and how to make that work.
And, the thought is, we're going to put we had a student go to nationals for the long jump. So they want to put, they have this video image. And it's a very nice image. It's very stark and attention-getting, and a link to the video. And, sometimes they feature a program or a major or...
There's also always what your sidebar is for. And the theory originally was that people wouldn't scroll down. Statistics have proven that people will scroll down and look for content, or they will look, or with SEO, people will hear about, the high jumper or whatever, and they'll Google and they'll come into your website that way, in which they'll get more information. Or they're just looking for news, or they're looking for something that's more relative to them. I'm presuming the athletic department on the athletic department page was all over that. And a slider on an internal page is way better than using it on, your home page. One of my friends works for Rutgers University, and the way that they've been using a slider is on an internal faculty page. It is their, now hear this, please sign up for this workshop. Whatever, the three things that the faculty needs to do, it flows by on a slider, which is a very different use case than putting it on, your front page of your website. Great questions, though. Yes, all the way in the back there, sorry.
Would you please explain what specifically is the problem with the dark content container? Is it just a visual contrast or something more?
It is absolutely the visual contrast. You just can't see it. And then also depending upon how you're creating that container. I've seen sometimes folks put an actual image back there, which is just, let's talk load time. It's a huge visual contrast problem. It's really rough on the eyes. Beyond a word or two, it is nobody wants to read paragraphs against a dark content container. And there are lots of resources on the web talking about accessibility and why that is not particularly helpful. There are also color pickers out there that you can figure out if you have enough of contrast between what you're writing, if people can see it well. Yes?
When you said accessibility, you're not talking about just visually impaired people, you're normal-sighted people? Yes, again, normal-sighted, but yes. It becomes very rough on the eyes. It's distracting. It's hard to read. It's hard to engage. If you take a look at every major newspaper in this country that all have online services, you're not going to find a single one of them with a dark content container, and that's because they want you to stay engaged on the site, and that's why it's a light color with a dark print. Yes?
What do you use to get your images down to 72 dpi?
I've used everything between Photoshop. You can actually use some of the software that's actually sitting right on your PC or your Mac. I haven't used a Mac in a couple years, but if you open a photo, I think it is in preview, you can actually tell it to save as. If you don't have any external tools, you can tell it to save as, and you can tell it low res or a specific DPI. You can do it that way. Windows used to be really good with photo editor, and you used to be able to save it that way, and then for reasons best known to them, you can't anymore, which is really infuriating. But there are a couple of tools on the web that you can even just Google, save my images, lower resolution, and you have a couple of online things that you can upload. They'll change it for you, and then you can just re-download again.
What was your resource on the 1%?
Yoast.
Oh, that came from Yoast.
Yes, on that slide, I didn't realize I didn't document it, but the first 3 bullet points on that slide were from Yoast, and the last 2 were from me.
I've definitely had that argument with clients, and I might show them stuff, and they're still
Yeah, no, that.
10 slides, and you're like, here's this research, and they still literally
Oh, I know, and there's nothing, and I get it. I used to work for folks who, would dig their heels in, and that's, like I said, why I have inflicted the bad slider on the world, because some people are convinced that they know what they know what they know. I had another client who they were absolutely convinced that the weather bug on their page, which was a cute little thing that would tell you the weather in the local area, and then it flitted up its little wings in the GIF like the ladybug, that he was convinced that that was one of the most important things, and that people really wanted to know when they hit his church website what the weather was. And I thought, couldn't convince the pastor to take that weather bug down. So sometimes I get it. It's a hard sell to get people to change. People get set in their ways. And sometimes they just need to keep hearing the message several times, and sometimes different people. I hear you. I've been there.
It's tough, because if I'm like, oh, well, Yoast says that, they're like,
Who's Yoast?
well, exactly.
Yeah.
That wouldn't mean anything to them if I told them that. They would just be like, whatever.
Gotcha. If it helps you to say that girl from WordCamp Minneapolis said it, go for it. I'm not sure I have anything better for you there, but that was the source on that, was Yoast. Yes?
What's your opinion of using Google Images and then going to usage rights and choosing,
It's the same problem. It's only as good as Google's tagging is. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. Like I said, a lot of those images sometimes will lead you to a Wiki Commons. In fact, the last time I gave this talk, I was speaking with somebody right after who actually works on that Wikimedia product, and he said, you gave really good advice, because sometimes somebody will, it's everybody pitching in on it. And he said, before we can review it, if it goes up and it is tagged wrong,
you're in for a whole lot of trouble if somebody finds that you've taken that and the metadata leads them to you. So I would say, really get them from sources that you need. Yes.
I do like the 123 hour. I really like that. It's got a lot of images up there. It's way cheaper than other stock image.
Yeah, I adore 123RF, and their search parameters are awesome. The only time I've ever taken longer there is because they give me too many good images, not too few good images. That's been my personal experience with that product. Yes?
I have a photo from, the, what's it, Commons?
Wiki Commons, yes?
Yeah, and it had an attribute, and I put the attribute on the site, but that still might be wrong?
You could be completely fine, it just, sometimes it might not be fine, and if somebody whose intellectual property comes along and says, look, you may say that you found this on Wiki Commons, but this is my intellectual property and I can prove it, because you haven't actually paid for the transaction somewhere, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, so I would really,
Verify that? It's like this image that I can't find anywhere else.
like I said, I would really go out to, like I said, a free resource and find something that would work better for you, or to really do some work and be super, super, super sure. I saw a website recently that was attributing work to Wiki Commons, and it was clearly the property of Getty Images. Clearly the property, historical photos, clearly the property of Getty Images. So you gotta really, it's great until they find you, and then they'll do things like using a Wayback Machine or something like that to find out how long you've been using the photo, and then they will charge you for every month it's been there. So yeah,
What about using Google Image Reverse Search?
that's a great way to figure out who actually owns it. Actually, I didn't even think of that, but that's a great. There's a reverse image search, so you can backtrack to find out where the source is. I'm just about, I am out of time. So thanks again for listening. I'll be around all weekend, and thank you again.